change is recorded in 20 metres, every single 20 metres cell across the country. So if you seek in a change data set that you had an urban area convert to say water, a silly example, you know that's likely to be an incorrect classification. So you can spatialise your incorrect errors by looking at the change data in another way. So don't always see it as reporting change, it helps you identify where that error is.
Thanks so much, Zach. And that was right on cue, Mark, because you're up next to give us an update on an open data service supporting government water resource management.
Just help me get to the right place. Start with PowerPoint.
Which one? Is it
Number
this
4,
one?
yeah. Can the lights come down a bit more?
I'll ask Tracy if we can get
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Hope you can all hear me. Just going to see if we can just turn the lights down. Is that okay, or do you want the lights a bit lower? Okay, I'll keep on going and see what happens then. Okay, what I'm going to talk to you about today is a data set which is actually available as an open source data to all of you if you're in a government department, if you're in an educational department, if you're one of the research councils, or if you're actually part of a commercial organisation doing work on behalf of any of those different government levels or education departments or research councils. So it's not actually a public available data set for Joe in the public, but hopefully in terms of everyone here in the audience, this is an open data source that I want to make you aware of. It is something that we developed within our two companies, Jutera and EcoSource, but it's given under license to the South African National Space Agency, and they, through funding from DSI, make it available to all of you. So this is really, hopefully, an educational moment to potentially show you another foundation data set that might be of use. Okay. Okay, so what we're looking at is a national coverage data set again. It's updated every single month, not annually, every single month. As I said, it's available to all tiers of government, educational departments, research councils and so on. And what we give you is, what is available, is both spatial and tabulated information on the extent of and the quantification of surface water all across South Africa's landscape, natural and man-made in one place. And again, just to emphasise, it's free, it's open to you. We're here to tell you that it's available and hopefully you'll make use of it. So it's built around the idea of actually creating intelligence that you can build a particular set of analytics on. Okay, I'm preaching to the converted in the sense that South Africa is a water-scarce country. What we're doing in trying to help you manage and maintain and understand that resource is giving you a monthly updated data set which is accurate, reliable, content consistent, and actually speaks to many different assets or facets of how you want to look at water resource management. So it provides, because it's built around Copernicus data, which comes from the European Space Agency, this data set only goes back to the beginning of 2016, but every month since 2016, the data is there. It provides national coverage, wall to wall, but it also provides very detailed local content, okay? And what we have are two publicly accessible dashboards, which I'm going to show you now, but behind the dashboards is the actual data. So what you have to do, if you want access to the physical digital data, the GIS coverages or the spatial data sets in tabulated form, you just register with SANZA and they will provide access to you. I'm not quite sure if my SANZA colleague Lasib is here in the audience, but if he is, I'm not sure if he's here today, but he is the contact point, but I'll show you how to get hold of the contact point in the websites. Okay, what I'm going to do is show you why I think this is so important and useful to you in terms of natural capital accounting. I'm going to run through slides that I've captured from the websites, then I'm going to try something very dangerous and actually show you the website live just at the end of the process as well. So when we're looking at the data, I want you to look at it in terms of how important this could be in terms of understanding pans and wetlands. Okay, what is the seasonal permanency of wetlands and pans in the landscape? What are the historical trends in terms of changes? What is the difference and the extent and the value or the area of man-made versus natural water resources across the landscape? You can see it in terms of estuarine trends and characteristics. You can look at basically total water security, whether it's actually for energy, for power, for potable water, for agriculture, food security, across the landscape at any point in time, and the same way look at it in terms of water flowing through the landscape. I'll give you an example as we get towards this point as how important it is to understand where water exists in the landscape and how much you've got in terms of understanding the flow through the landscape. And then obviously, a last one, I can show you examples of how you can look at this data in terms of understanding and managing invasive water plants. Okay, so this is the landing page. There are two websites. There's one which deals with surface water, and there is one that deals with the volumes in the actual storage impoundments or the dams and reservoirs. Okay, so this is what is known as the National Water Quantity System, is actually colloquially known as Mzansi Manzi. Okay, so when you land on the system, or the web page, this is what you will see. And you can see in the far right corner the ability to switch on the last 3 months and then long-term occurrences and long-term frequencies. This is really just allowing you an easy way to look at the data without having to actually download the data. So what I could do, I could zoom in, for example, to the Val Dam. Okay, so this is actually the data from last month. If you were to go on the website today, you would see it's been updated for July 2024. So the data is updated in the first week of each month, retrospectively. So we've had to wait until all of the satellite imagery is captured for the month of June in this case, and then it's processed in July. And what we have is a use of both Sentinel-2 optical data and Sentinel-1 radar data. So it's an all-weather capability. So it doesn't matter if it's completely cloudy, you are still going to get data content on the actual website. And if you look at today's data set, and you actually look in the Western Cape, you'll see that there's no cloud-obscured areas, even despite all the rain and the clouds they've had, all the dams are showing up. So what we can do now, we can actually then switch on what are called the long-term occurrence, which is the lower green area. And what appears green in the screen are now areas that have been classified as water, not in this current month, but at some point in the last 8 years. So now you can start to see where water was but doesn't occur now. In some cases that can be due to vegetation, in some cases it can be due to low water levels, and you have to look at the pattern around the water feature to determine which one it is. This is data that is actually looking for a challenge to help solve. If we then look at, say, somewhere like wetlands, if you look at Christmasmere and the pans there, what I'm showing now is actually the lower button, which is the long-term occurrence. So the darker the blue, the more frequently we've recorded water in every single month in that 8-year period, and the lighter tones, less water occurrence. So first of all, you can see with the dark water pans, those are pretty much permanent water areas, okay, in terms of long-term trends. The lighter blue ones are actually where you're just getting seasonal water. The pans which have got a black hole in the middle are likely to have a vegetative island. Now the fact that that black hole exists when I switch on the long-term occurrence means that either it's actually an emergent area or it's permanently vegetated. And you can see in terms of the backdrop, there are some pans which are in the backdrop mapping which are no longer ever showing anything to do with water. So those pans, even though they might exist in a topographic map, don't exist in reality in terms of areas that get flooded on a regular basis. You can look at the same system in terms of invasive vegetation. So this is now 2 dams that I know very well. So Hartbeespoort Dam on the left-hand side and Bronkhorstspruit Dam on the right-hand side. Hartbeespoort Dam in the last couple of months has actually got rid of most of the hyacinth through active management principles. There's a little bit left, as you can see, in those areas that have been ringed in red. But at Bronkhorstspruit, they've got a massive problem with water hyacinth. And so what I've done here is to switch on the current month, this was June, together with the long-term occurrence. So all the green areas is where we previously recorded water, but not in that particular month. So the fact that that green is not showing a a kind of a shoreline effect, which would be possibly indicative of a lower water level. It's ad hoc shapes across the actual dam. We know that's water hyacinth, and I know, because I go there fairly regularly, that big green arm that's pointing down to the south, what they built across there was actually a cable on floats to try and trap the water hyacinth. So we know it's accurately picking up. Now, please bear in mind, this is not a single point in time. This is a median picture of all the observations for that particular calendar month. So across South Africa, we process about 30 to 40 terabytes of data. So for every location, we're looking at best about 5, possibly 6 satellite images being recorded, and then we look at the median extent of water recorded across that time frame. Then you take the estuaries, okay, going back to St. Lucia where Zach looked at. This time it's looking at it purely in terms of the change in extent of water levels, okay, over a 8-year period. So again, the darker the blue, the more frequently water is occurring in each of those particular locations. In some cases, the changes can be sedimentation. In other cases, it can be changes in terms of the way the river's flowing through the estuary and so on. But the data is there to show that, okay? It just needs to be used if it's useful for a particular solution that we're trying to achieve. What we can then do is to go from this website, we click on to the volume site, which is actually one of the tabs. There's orange tabs in the top right or left. And we can now go to see the same information, but processed in terms of dam volumes and actual storage in quantitative terms. What we've done, we've come up with a methodology that allows us to use satellite-only data without requiring any in-situ instrumentation, and that's why we can scale this across other countries and across the whole of the country in South Africa very, very easily. We've built models that allow us to actually project the surrounding topography around a man-made impoundment underwater to kind of create or simulate bathymetric profiles. So we're using the profile of the surrounding above water landscape to project down to give us what we think is the topography underwater. The reason we have to do that is that most of the terrain data sets that are available globally and nationally don't have any subsurface contours, so we have to model those. What we then do is to actually identify what is the volume of water under a certain surface area against those modelled bathymetric profiles. We've done accuracy assessments with the Department of Water and Sanitation for several dams when we set this process up, and we know that for the dam volume modelling, although it is modelled, it's somewhere between 85 and about 92% accurate. So it's a good estimation of what's taking place. But the difference is that prior to this system being in place, Department of Water and Sanitation had, from a national perspective, about 250 strategic dams they were monitoring using in-field telemetry every month, every day basically. With this system now, we're now reporting on over 300,000 dams, from small farm dams right through to the large national dams every month. So you get a complete picture of the total water landscape across the country, both spatially, where it's occurring, and also quantitatively in terms of how much we've got stored here. So to take that a bit further, that's what I'm saying here, you've now got 300,000 dams monitored every single month, okay, and we categorise them into large dams, dam safety dams, medium and small dams. The small dams are your 1 hectare and so on, smaller farm dams. We report the volumes for those per quaternary catchment. Everything else is reported individually. So there's about 25,000 dams where you get individual volumetric data each and every month. Okay. So what happens is I can choose, and this is the website again, I can choose a particular water management area. Those little boxes, think of as buckets, okay. Each of those buckets, the colour inside the bucket represents the colour and the legend, as you can see on that graph in the lower right, okay. So light blue is, have a look at that again, moderately high water levels, okay. If there's a white gap at the top of the bucket, if I just go back to that one there, you can see some of the, especially in the Western Cape, some of the buckets have very white areas. That is actually indicating that in terms of the total potential storage capacity of all the dams in that area, this is actually very, very low, and a lot of the dams are very low. So if the bucket has got a solid block of colour, then most of the dams are pretty much full, and you're very close to having full capacity storage in that particular area. So if I go back to this one, let's look at it in catchment C. So in catchment management area C, you've now got the graph in the lower right corner is indicating two lines. There's a dotted line and a solid line. The dotted line is the previous year's trajectory in terms of the total storage in all the dams in management area C, and the solid line is this year's. So you can see that in June at least we were tracking parallel but slightly lower than where we were at the same time last year. Okay. What we can then do is to actually go even closer to an individual dam within management area C. So we're back to the Vaal Dam again now. So in the table you can actually see that if the dam was full, it would be 2.6 million cubic metres, and at the moment it was in June 2.1, so you're looking at about 83%, if I'm reading that correctly. So you're getting an indication, and again the graphic in the bottom is indicating to you where that stands now in both the current year, the solid black line, against last year. So you can see that during the early part of the winter, we actually were significantly lower than where we were last year. It is tracking up again now slightly. If you look at it now, the same website, I'm not sure what will happen. I haven't actually seen it from this. It was actually loaded today, but it gives you that. And then we can take the same graph and we can actually look at the full history of data. This one goes back to 2019, but as I said, remember, monthly data goes back to 2016, so you can see the full history of volume changes. Maybe the dip there is linking back to the El Nino sort of dry drought period we had. Okay, so the data is there for all of this across the entire country. Just to give you an example of how important this is, that we did an example test. There's a dam, which I forget the name of, just above Zanin in Limpopo. It's a very large storage dam, and beneath, the water flows from that large dam down past Zanin. It goes through a very intensive cultivation area with lots of small farm irrigation dams. It's a citrus growing area. Then it reaches the smaller the rural communities before it reaches Kruger Park. But in that intensely cultivated area, there are hundreds, thousands of dams. Okay, so if each of those dams are full, when you release a slug of water from Zanin, it will flow through all those small dams and quickly go through them because they're full to reach the low community areas and then Kruger Park. If those dams are full, that water can reach Kruger Park in about 12 hours. Okay, but if those dams are empty, it can take about 3 weeks. So the point is, if you only know what's happening in the big dams, you might say, oh, we've released a slug of water, but you don't know how long it's going to take to get somewhere else because you don't know the status of the water landscape in the rest of the catchment. And that is what this is actually providing for you, is that really detailed local information on how much water we've got and where is it sitting in the landscape. Okay, so this is just an example again down in the Cape. I wasn't sure who the audience was going to be today, so that is the long-term history of Tewater's Kloof, so that stretches back to close to day zero in Cape Town as well. In the system itself, this is just an example of the kind of downloads you can actually do. So this is now one of the Excel spreadsheets that are updated each and every month. So this will give you the long-term volumes each month and the current volumes and the full storage capacity for every single dam. I think this one is the large dams, and the same spreadsheet exists for the dam safety, the medium-sized dams, and then for each of the quaternaries across the country from a farm dam perspective. What we've done as well is that there is a really intensive set of metadata behind the whole structure. So on the landing page for the surface water areas, if you go to the About This web page tab and then scroll down, you'll see two links to both a summary and a full metadata report on the data. And that gives you all the mapping accuracies and the modelling accuracies as well. And then this is actually what you do if you want to register. On the same pull-down menu, it will give you the email contacts for SANZA. So you just need to write an email to them, preferably with a letter from a government department indicating that you're doing work on behalf of them, or just a university, if that's what you're doing, and you'll be given access to the monthly information as well. Okay, and I think that is the last one. Okay, so this was just tongue-in-cheek. Okay, it's free, it's open, it is waiting for you to use it. So the website does work, believe me. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Okay.
Any questions for Mark? We'll take one or two. Roderick, and then Ames.
Where was the question? Sorry.
Thank you so much. That's very insightful. With the Water Research Commission, we're working on a dam siltation program, and just looking at the images that you're showing there, with showing the volume of water in the dams, or the potential volume of water in the dams. One of the problems that we have with our dams is how they tend to silt up, especially when they're in certain landscapes. We've got some dams that are at 90% sediment with just 10% of water on top of it. Just one question is, are you able to disaggregate the water from the silt that forms in the middle, on the bottom of the dam? And the second one was around, so the Department of Water and Sanitation has 320 something dams. Are you able to use this data set to isolate just those dams that the department owns? Or do you have to take all the dams within a water management area to, when you do your analysis? Can I, for instance, use this platform to just look at the dams owned by the department?
Okay.
So it's the payment also.
Mine will be quick. Thanks, Mark. That's really, really exciting. And I'm sorry if I missed it, but I don't think I saw water quality information as part of this yet, which is so something you can address. And then, if not, and maybe even that relates to the siltation question, is I'm not a techie person, so the kind of the tech that exists there, the platform, everything, is there scope for it to grow, to add more things into it?
Okay.
So that, as people use it and want to engage with it more, I mean, there's so many things I can think of. So I'm wondering, is it built in order to be able to grow with the needs of the community of practice? Thanks.
Okay.
Last one, Zach. just one for Zach, thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Brilliant presentation. Just two quick questions. How back does your long-term extent go to? So you had a long-term extent and there was two long-term extent. How far back does it go to? And then you said you can download the data set. So is it downloaded monthly in a raster format with the information in it? Can you access that if you want to put in that information?
Okay. Right. Okay. So I can get these correctly then. Okay. Siltation. Okay. The modelling that we've done for the volumes couldn't take into account siltation, but we're aware of that problem. However, every cloud has a silver lining. The duration of the data sets, which goes back to 2016, because it's the start of Sentinel-2, covers severe droughts in most parts of the country. So we know that the surface water coverages each month, if you look through them, you will start to see at some point siltation being exposed at low water levels. So we are aware that you can, for any individual dam, look through the time series and identify siltation patterns because we've actually experienced low water levels. So it hasn't been done, it needs someone to do it. Okay, and then the volumetric models can be adjusted to that. But at the moment, the volumes are based on non-siltation, but the siltation extent and the depth can be determined from the surface coverages if you pull them into a GIS system. Okay. In terms of looking at individual dams, the websites are fixed as you see them here. Okay. They're meant as public information services. If you register with SANZA and pull the data sets down, and it comes down as both GIS coverages, raster, and tabulated, updated every single month, okay, for the full history, then you can dive into whatever, you can look at one dam through the whole history. But unfortunately, you're going to have to do the dog work of actually extracting that dam out for your particular studies. But what SANZA gives you is the full national coverage, raster and spatial, every month. You do the dog work. Okay. Okay. And then Amy, okay. Okay. In terms of going, okay, water quality. Okay, this was developed as in a sense, a pilot study which we operationalised across South Africa. Okay, we've taken this one stage further as a separate product called WaterSphere 360. There is a web page for it. It's one word, WaterSphere 360, where we've actually taken this as the core functionality and we've created a globally scalable solution. Okay, I don't mean to cover the world, but we can drop it anywhere in the world. Okay, so we've got test sites taking place in Portugal and Spain as well as South Africa. That includes the core functionality of where water is and how much we've got in the volumes. Okay, it adds in 25 years worth of precipitation data, so we can look at linking volumes and precipitation together and current precipitation. It looks at vegetative response to that, okay, in terms of vegetation quality in cropped areas and natural areas. It includes water quality in terms of 4 or 5 different parameters: chlorophyll, sedimentation, turbidity, chlorophyll, algal, one I've forgotten as well. That's done for the large dams. We can't do that for small rivers because we haven't the volume of data, the area of data to do it. And we also have groundwater change inside it as well. All of it coming from satellite, okay? So that's why we don't need to do anything in terms of in-situ networks. That's why it's highly scalable. And then we link all of that to a drought index, so we can report each quaternary catchment, or equivalent to that globally, as either the 5 levels from meteorological drought, vegetative drought, precipitative runoff drought, hydrological drought, and then groundwater. So basically, lack of rainfall affecting vegetation, lack of rainfall showing up as a reduced stream flow, and then groundwater being disturbed as well. Okay, so that is something that it'll be operational in this year. It's not part of this. I'd love to talk to Sandra about this, but we do have that capability as an operational capability. What we're doing there is being sponsored by the European Space Agency as well, so that's helping with that one. But I can talk to you about that afterwards. But it's on WaterSphere 360 is the website for it. Okay. Was there anything else? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nicole Duplessis from SAON, NRF, and she'll talk to us about advancing ecosystem accounting, so really creating space for leveraging marine and coastal data. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really just here as an advocate for what we are trying to do and to ask for collaboration, I think, which is the message that has really come out of this first day of the forum. So I'm really here to discuss a little bit of what we do at SAON, but also what we have been doing as part of an NRF community of practice focused on ocean accounts. So SAON was established in 2002 with the intention of creating a national research facility that would observe long-term environmental change. And over the past 2 decades, SAON has developed a footprint across all the major ecosystems around South Africa. And our research sites, our equipment, the aircraft, the vessels, and the data is freely available for use by national and international scientists. Now our footprint extends all the way to Antarctica, and we can really call SAON a mega research infrastructure, as we now host the expanded freshwater and terrestrial environmental observation network, the shallow marine and coastal research infrastructure, and the South African polar research infrastructure. And I think the geographical range of all our platforms really puts SAON in an opportune position as a key partner in national ecosystem accounting programs. Another key milestone for SAON was the establishment of our Ulwazi data node. And this node ensures that people can find our data and that it is accessible in the long term. The node is responsible for ensuring that all the data collected by SAON adheres to international best practice and standards, as well as developing useful decision support tools with different partners in South Africa. And their incredible work was recently recognized, where they were the winners in a National Science and Technology Award ceremony for their work on their open data platform. One of the key decision support tools that has been developed by the team is the South African Risk and Vulnerability Atlas to assist with decision making, and that's funded by the Department of Science and Innovation. So we've heard really a lot about terrestrial accounts, and so I think it's nice to bring in our marine and coastal accounts, because there are lots of discussions around these ocean economies and blue economies internationally. And we kind of need to grapple, I think, with what this means within South Africa and within the different reporting systems. And we are very much open to being partners within this because we are such a big data provider. So when we heard about this global ocean accounts partnership and the ocean accounts framework that they're developing, we thought that this would really be a good opportunity to look at our research and see how it can contribute in terms of this. The framework that GOAP is promoting is intended to integrate data from the environment to the social aspects, the economy, governance, and risk. So it's quite a broad framework. GOAP is currently co-chaired by the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, Indonesia, and the Charles Darwin Foundation for the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador, with a secretariat based at the University of New South Wales in Australia. So it is really a global multi-institutional partnership, and it's open to national governments, intergovernmental institutions, research institutions, industry bodies. And there's really been a lot of thought that has gone into this by all the secretariat and their partners to gain the high-level support of governments, because that's really where this needs to fit. And so the government of Indonesia, with project partners, launched their National Ocean Accounts platform last month during the Global Accounts Dialogue, which was held in Bali. Other government partners in GOAP include Canada, China, India, Maldives, Mozambique, and Mexico, to name but a few. So this is really globally recognized, and countries are grappling with how these accounts really need to look. And what I do want to note here is that Ocean Accounts isn't replacing anything. It is really to be the data foundation for the monitoring and evaluation for systems such as the NPAs, MSP, and integrated coastal management, whatever national governments have in place to manage their marine and coastal ecosystems. So our contribution to this has been as part of the NRF community of practice, which is led by NMU. It's a very number of universities across South Africa are taking part in this. The first phase started in 2020 with the aim of looking at each of the framework components, the database structure, and synergies between the different components. However, missing from phase one was the inclusion of the economic accounts and economists, which is now being looked at in phase two, as well as plastic accounts, which is being driven by CPUT. So SAON has been looking at work program 2, and what we've been trying to do is to visualize what ocean accounts would actually look like for open ocean systems, so all through the water column from the sea surface, pelagic and benthic. So this has been quite a interesting endeavor. It is very much a work in progress. So what we have looked here is at the study area for phase one was Algoa Bay, just to kind of try and localize things and keep the data manageable. So it is a highly utilized area with the city, the port, the MPA that's there. SAON has our Wandle node, which is based there at Nelson Mandela University. And then using this methodology by Saye et al., which is looking at ecosystems through the water column and developing a system for that, we looked if we could use our in situ data that has been collected over 10 years at the Sentinel site to develop something like this. We did also very intensively talk to SANB colleagues that were involved in the NCAVES project, and also the UN revision of or adoption of the ecosystem environment accounts as a standard. So this is just to kind of show where our instruments were deployed. And in this case, it was actually found that the instruments only went to 100 meters, and so we couldn't really have that full depth investigation that we had wanted to do. But there is now a PhD student who is looking at how to do this using voxels, which is a very exciting thing. But it is still, as I say, very much work in progress. This is just kind of to show some of the map layers that could be created. This is static. We're trying to do something that's a bit more interactive. Another area we looked at was looking at all available related data sets for Algoa Bay, so use layers. Unfortunately, this had already been collated by the Community of Practice for Marine Spatial Planning, which was also led by NMU, and we could meet with them to discuss the data sets they already had and the stakeholders that they had engaged with, so that we didn't, duplicate contacting people. And we also developed a tool, just quite a simple marine visualization for the maps that were in existence. But we also, for the Sentinel site data, the oceanographic data, we did this, that small inbox there, where you could look at the data that SAON has that we've collected for the environment, but then you can also go and download that for your analysis. So phase 2 of this project, we really looked at the data sets for the other 2 Sentinel sites, which are still under development, with the aim of trying to provide input to those research plans in terms of how it should look like if we actually wanted to do environmental accounting for that. So there's still a lot of integration that does need to happen between our work programs itself as the community of practice, and we hope that that's kind of a next step and to continue with this work. However, as I said, we do realize that this is a system that needs national uptake at the planning and policy level to really have any value for national reporting programs. And I know we were asked, just like one question on reflections, but I thought 2, because they're talking about 2 different aspects here, to really see how, as SAON, can we better assist with these national account developments, especially for the marine environment, and then also noting the complexities for the marine environment. How do we ensure that this is marine and coastal accounts are prioritized, because it is much more difficult than terrestrial. You don't just have a satellite that can take an image. We're talking about 4,000 meters of water if we're looking at our open ocean systems. How do we account for that? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Any questions or comments for Nicole? I see one up there. Anything from that side? Okay, let's go.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for a detailed presentation. Very interesting work that SAON is doing. My question is, in terms of phase 1, where can we access the reports? And particularly the interest, because the space you are doing the NCAs, you have various ecosystems. You looked at MPA, there are also estuaries in that space, and also the actual Algoa Bay. So I want also to check, because I want to take a step back because I want to understand whether do we have information in terms of the ecosystem services. Do you have that kind of information where we say from these services, this is how we'll go forward in terms of doing natural capital accounting? And the reason I'm asking this, it's one of the things that a challenge for us to make a case in terms of the ecosystems we are managing in the marine space. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's a very important question. In the two phases that we have looked at, we didn't get to looking at that kind of ecosystem flows from ecosystem to the users. Because it is, I think, still so novel, and some of the work that has been done there is looking at the communities around Algoa Bay and how they're using the oceans, that information is slowly building up, but at the moment I can say that isn't readily available. But in this presentation I've got some websites and resources. We do have a website that links to the different reports that we have done, so that is readily available, and then also to kind of show where the data has come from.
Are there any other questions for Nicole? Right, but thanks so much for that.
Thank you.
All right, getting to our last presentation for this session is Zianda from Sandy, Zianda JRC, and she's looking at towards an extended range of ecosystem accounts.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zianda Jasi, and I am a GIS intern with the Natural Capital Accounting Project at SANBI. And today I'm honored to present to you on the topic towards an expanded range of ecosystem accounts. In this presentation, I was supposed to give a brief overview of the ecosystem accounts, but unfortunately, because of time, I'll just browse through the list of ecosystem accounts and thematic accounts that have been compiled in South Africa to date, followed by a look at the funding proposals towards expanding these accounts, and lastly, share some key takeaways. Earlier on today, Tuli mentioned a range of accounts. Some of these accounts were ecosystem accounts and some were thematic accounts. These are a subset of the NCA, Natural Capital Accounting, and use the system of environmental economic accounting system as a measurement framework. And in the following slides, I will just take you guys through the list of accounts that have been compiled, of the ecosystem accounts that have been compiled in South Africa to date, including thematic accounts. Firstly, we have the National River Ecosystem accounts. These accounts were compiled through the NCA project. Next, we have the Land and Terrestrial Ecosystem account. Information from this account is very important because it informs the GBF indicator for goal A. Following those accounts, we have the experimental ecosystem accounts for South Africa's estuaries, and this account were compiled by CSIR, SANBI in collaboration with SANBI, States SA, and other organizations. The next set of accounts that were compiled are the Ecosystem Service account, which were compiled for the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Next, we have the ecosystem accounts for water-related ecological infrastructure, which were developed through the EI for Water Security project, of which Tuli has already spoken about. The next set of accounts are the marine ecosystem accounts. These initial work was done on these accounts, but they're not completed yet. Following those, we have the accounts for protected areas, and these accounts track the size of the protected areas network from 1900 to 2020, sorry. Then we have the accounts for strategic water source areas, which Thuli has already spoken about. Sorry, I have to browse through these. Lastly, we have the sub-national water resource accounts. These accounts were compiled also through the EI for Water Security project. Most of these accounts were donor funded, and some were compiled with very limited capacity. And the plan is to expand the range of these accounts. And in order to do that, we rely on funding, building capacity, and maintain data sets. But we have been working on a plan to see the expansion of these range of accounts. For this plan, firstly, there is the JEF 8 project on conservation, development, and livelihoods for thriving people and nature. And in this project, we plan to compile a range of ecosystem and thematic accounts for protected areas to show biodiversity's economic contribution. Secondly, we have this GCF project on ecosystem-based adaptation in strategic water source areas. In this project, we plan to expand accounts for strategic water source areas and explore the use of information to secure the strategic water source areas. The third project is the GCF project on EcoDRR, and the plan for this project is to compile accounts related to carbon and ecosystem services associated with disaster risk reduction. South Africa, while South Africa is a global leader in ecosystem accounting and has done a lot of different types of accounts, it hasn't fully achieved institutional support needed for long-term success. And to improve, we need to invest more in data and capacity. Investing in building capacity is a long-term solution. Investing also in better tools and methods for processing data, compiling these accounts, and serving information from these accounts. This needs, for us to do this needs funding from donor projects to take that further. And it's also important for countries in the global south to lead this change and ensure that it includes local experts. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zianda. So Zianda is one of our interns, and you could hear the nervousness in her voice. So I want to give a clap. We want to open if there's any questions for Zianda. Amy, any other questions? Okay, let's start with those. And one at the back as well.
I'm going to ask you a really hard question.
Oh, wow.
And you had the difficult task of also having to figure out how to speed it up. So thank you for managing all of that. Maybe just one thing that I wanted to add is that in each of, we wanted to just give a sense of the fact that we recognize we have to think about how do we replicate the accounts that we've compiled and also expand on them to meet the needs that have already been raised as the accounts have been released. So the question I think Nicole raised around doing marine protected areas, for instance, you can see that that's part of the plan. But in each of those projects, those were just highlighting which of the accounts we're trying to find a home for them. But in each of those, they fit into a bigger context, a bigger goal of the project, where the information from the accounts can support the objectives of the project. So, for instance, by having updated information on the biodiversity economy, our protected areas, the extent of promotion of our ecosystems, in the case of showing that by expanding our protected areas in a way that builds local biodiversity economic activity, we are creating a world where we've got thriving people and nature. So in the case of the ecosystem disaster risk reduction project, that would be information that would be useful in the context of that. So yeah, good to really have a chance to present that whole bigger picture, but just wanted to emphasize that this is not just accounts for the sake of accounts. I think we're looking to where can accounts be useful and furthering the objective of seeing what's in the national NCA strategy, but also that it's linked to policy and information needs. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. I see we've got another hand up there. And then Moho's the other person.
Thank you very much, Zianda. Just a quick question. I think under the GF8, there's one that talks to the expanded one, which includes
Ecosystem.
wetlands. I want to check because for the estuaries one, we have done an experimental one. I don't see estuaries, and I want to check whether do you consider an estuary as a wetland in terms of Ramsar Convention, or you will do the accounts from estuary since you have started with the experimental? Thanks.
Can you come through?
There's just another question
Question
aside
from
from
Mo.
Moho, and then Amy can answer that. So first Moho.
I'm trying to remember, so if anybody who knows Ramsar better whether estuaries are part of that, I can't actually answer that question. But but for these ecosystem accounts, yeah, we don't see, so estuaries and marine ecosystem accounts are not included in this at this stage, just because I don't think there'll be enough money to do all of them. So those are still accounts that we need to, make a plan for. This is definitely not the full suite of accounts that we should be doing, but this is the current kind of suite that we're working towards doing. And yeah, I'm sure anybody who's done kind of big project proposal development can appreciate it's a lot of work to try and put together these proposals and to sort of see this further. So if anybody's got some suggestions of how we can work together and see more, including estuary and marine accounts done, and we'd need obviously have the partners who are experts in that involved in that, then do come forward. Thanks.
Thanks. Can we just get Moho and then we'll close the session? I know there's lots of comments and questions. I'm just mindful of time. We still have another session after this, so I just want to, Moho will be our last question and then we'll close.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations, Zianda, on your first presentation. I just wanted to know if there's a plan to update any of the accounts that are not included in the upcoming projects that Sepa mentioned earlier, that they help or they're essential for reporting for the global biodiversity framework targets, like the land interaction ecosystem accounts, because I don't see them in any of the upcoming projects. Oh, they are. See them.
Okay, so I think Amy's answered that. And with that, I want to thank everybody for your attention, your time, listening, participating. And then I'm going to hand back to Tracy I think we've got a break coming up, but I'm going to hand back to Tracy now. Thanks.
Okay, so in the interest of time and getting home before 7 for those people who have to travel to Joburg or further, we're going to break for tea until 16:35, which is 10 minutes. So briskly go up the stairs, grab some tea, whatever else there is, and in the meantime, if you could ask the ushers to please go and check what's going on in training room 9 and get them back here by 16:35. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Hey!